Abadox landed on the NES with that gross sound that raw meat makes when it hits the floor back in 1990. While shooters on the NES were a dime a dozen back then, Abadox was unique in that it was one of the only shooters at the time that tried to merge the standard shoot-'em-up gameplay of other shooters with a more horror-like sci-fi setting. The advertising for the game was in full-on gross-out mode, and was at the very least corny enough to get noticed.
A monster devours your planet in Abadox for Nintendo. Do you have the guts to battle inside the belly of the beast? Fight ugly eyeballs, twisted worms, skeleton fish, guardian ghouls, and save the planet from total destruction. Abadox for your Nintendo.
So did Abadox offer up its own unique take on the genre? Or was it yet another generic NES shoot-'em-up that we'd all played at least a few dozen times already? Well, put on your favorite exosuit because we're about to go head first into Abadox. In a world where most NES storylines barely attempt to explain why or what you're doing in any given game, Abadox at least had one hell of a setup. Essentially, you come back to your home planet after hunting the galaxy for pixely aliens, only to find that your entire planet has been eaten by a massive alien. Of course, the only reaction you can have to seeing such a thing is to turn around and get the fuck out of there as fast as possible. Wait, no, I forgot, this is an NES game. What actually happens is that you decide to fly inside this planet-sized alien by yourself, kill hundreds of enemies, and ultimately save your planet. That's the plot of Abadox. God bless you, video games. Once you're actually down on the planet, the game begins in earnest, and what you get is a pretty standard shoot-'em-up game, or if you're super cool, a shmup. You fly around as this little guy in a spacesuit shooting at whatever decides to fly in from the right side of the screen at you. You start off with what equates to the space version of a pea shooter to vanquish the never-ending stream of alien hemorrhoids coming at you. To help you along, you'll of course find power-ups that include such things as speed boosts, better weapons, and spinny orb things that absorb incoming bullets. If this all sounds familiar to you, then you'd probably be right, as this should be deja vu if you've ever played a shmup in your life. Abadox definitely isn't going for anything very original in the gameplay department that games like Life Force didn't already do way better years earlier. The only thing mildly original about the gameplay are the top-down scrolling levels that pop up now and again. It does at least inject some variety into the game that desperately needs it, but that's about it. Beyond that, this is as basic a shmup as you'll be able to find on the NES. What you do get in Abadox, however, is some really cool stage and enemy designs. As already mentioned, the entire game takes place inside one giant alien, so get used to pulsating meat walls, huge tumor-like obstacles, and a really neat variety of enemies and bosses. The cool fusion of alien grossness and what used to be your home planet makes for some fun stages to fly through, and goes a long way in setting Abadox apart from other shooters, at least in the graphics department. Sadly though, that's about all Abadox has going for it, unless you count the nigh-on impossible difficulty level. Yes, Abadox is hard, really hard, and not so much because there's a ton of bullets coming at you. It's actually fairly easy to dodge the incoming bullets. No, the hardest thing about Abadox is just how unforgiving it is. Getting your ship powered up can make you feel almost invincible, tearing through enemies and bosses like warm butter. But make one mistake, and you're sent packing back to the beginning of the level, or a mid-boss checkpoint with only that pea shooter in tow. At this point, you may as well just restart the whole game, because it's basically impossible to get powered back up enough to continue on. And with every enemy in the game meticulously placed for maximum amounts of anger-induced testicle punching, you're going to have to memorize everything to get far at all. If all that sounds like a good time, then Abadox is, well, it's probably your game. The rest of us, though, will be over here laughing at your insanity. Amazingly enough, though, the difficulty doesn't extend to the bosses themselves, as all of them are incredibly easy to the point where you can just sit in one spot and never move on several of them. The rest only require a bit of maneuvering here and there to beat. It only goes to show that the developers really only knew how to make the difficulty the shitty, cheap way, rather than the skill-based difficulty of other better shooters. Still though, Abadox has a weird charm to it for me. It may be almost completely impossible while being the most generic playing shmup around, but it's still got a B-movie quality to it that I love. Yes, there are far better shooters on the NES out there to play, but it's worth checking out Abadox just for its ridiculous setting, and even more ridiculous enemies and bosses. Plus, there's not too many other games out there where you can say that you had to kill a giant alien turd to make it to the next stage. So give Abadox a try. You may end up liking, or at least laughing your way through one of the NES's more obscure shmups.